Hey, and welcome everybody. It is so wonderful to have you join us for this tour of the Upper Village BIA area. This is a really interesting area. We've certainly got wonderful shops and delicious restaurants, but we also have a lot of history, including community history. My name is Susan Poizner, and I'm the founder of a community orchard you'll be visiting today on this tour. And I'm really lucky to have Harley with me. Harley, can you introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about who you are?
I certainly can. My name is Harley Carulis. I am the CEO of Toronto History Walks. And I've been doing this for about 6 years now. I've delved into the history of Toronto. I cover the entire city and really looking forward to enlightening everybody about the history of this particularly fascinating history of Toronto.
Wonderful, Harley. So here we are. We are at the Eglinton West subway station. And for me, this is a very practical location. I hop on the subway to go everywhere. My husband and I don't even have a car because it's such a wonderful part of town where you can get everywhere. But there is a lot of history in this neighborhood, in particular, the Spadina Expressway. Our community was going to be split in two. It was going to be divided by an expressway. Can you tell me, Harley, a little bit about the history of that experience? What happened?
I want to go back to 1943. The first planning paper in Toronto was released, and that explained a lot of very interesting things. Number one, Toronto's population growth was going to be to the north. So you're looking at Lawrence, Eglinton would kind of take the brunt of a new population explosion. So a lot of freeways were planned coming down from the 401, which was going in across the top of the city. And the Spadina Expressway was in a planning paper and released in 1961. And the bulldozers were in the ground soon after. So, had the Spadina Expressway gone in, it would have destroyed not only the Upper Village, but also Kensington and Chinatown. By 1971, the Spadina Expressway was pretty much ended.
So let's talk about that for 1 second. So in here, the province, I guess, comes up with this plan to make it easy for people to drive downtown. They want to slice through a neighborhood, which includes a ravine with this wonderful fast highway. But community members, and I was not in the community at that time, I was quite young, but community members said, no, 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 we're not putting up with this.
And who was in that group was Jane Jacobs.
And
She
Jane Jacobs was famous because,
she stopped an expressway in New York City, the Lower Manhattan Expressway, and then she moved to Toronto, and she settled in the Annex District, and she fought the Spadina Expressway from that angle. As it would come into the Annex District. So her voice was very strong to put a stop to the Spadina Expressway.
so interesting. Okay, well, thanks to Jane Jacobs and all the other people, we still have a neighborhood that is intact. We have the Village BIA. Let's go to our next stop, which is Ben Nobleman Park. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our project there. So come on, everybody, let's go to our next stop.
Let's go.
Hey, everybody, this is stop number 2 on the virtual tour of the Upper Village BIA. And here you are at the entrance to the Ben Nobleman Park Community Orchard in Toronto. So, this orchard was once a very sad and depressing little park. Not much happened here. In fact, when I took this picture, I think it was 2008, 2007. I saw this man actually enjoying this green space and I took a picture. It's like I never saw people in this park. I would walk through the park all the time to go to the BIA to do my shopping, but there was nothing happening here. And there was a playground that was made out of wood. It was rotting and it was dangerous. And that was it. So I thought something good could be done with this space. So I talked to one of my neighbors. This is my friend and neighbor, Sherry, and Sherry's a beautiful gardener. She knows so much about gardening. And I said, what do you think that we start a community project in the park? And we could do a garden. And I said, maybe we can even plant fruit trees because we could all work together to take care of these trees um, and make it beautiful in the park so that there's, stuff happening. Anyway, Sherry said, yeah, let's do it. So I had to go through the process. I spoke to my city councilor, who at the time was Joe Mahevic, and I said, Joe, I want to do this. I want to transform the park. I want to make it into a vibrant community center where there are fruit trees and gardens and a reason for people to come out and play together. And he said, Susan, I think it's a great idea. Let's do it. So we had to organize a community meeting because when you make a change like that, you really need to ask the community because not everybody will support the idea. So at the meeting, I worked together with our park supervisor, Chris Martin, and we presented the idea to the community. And we said, we'd like to plant a community orchard. We want this many fruit trees, apples, pears, cherries, apricots. And we'll make this a place where people come to volunteer and have fun and have a good time. It was a bit of a challenge getting this idea to actually go ahead. There were some people who had concerns, but in the end, Joe Mahevic decided we would have our orchard and we planted our fruit trees and the park started to change. So Harley, this is me and the gang in the early years. We have so many volunteers. Some have come and gone over the years. But have you ever been involved in a project like this? Do you understand how they work or?
I do, but I've not been in a project like this. This looks really, really interesting. It's really managed to get the community together. I think you're amazing for what you have done and what you have accomplished. It's quite amazing.
Well, I want to say as well, actually, the amazing thing about this project is we got people involved of all different ages. So the volunteers are, our youngest volunteer was 6 years old. Our oldest volunteers are coming towards their 80s. And this Jane here was a volunteer for a few years, but she also did our beautiful mural that you're seeing on the bulletin board. Her and her uncle, Jeff, they painted this mural. So that's what's beautiful, that you can get so many people involved. And just to show you, that park that nobody ever used to go to has become such a place where there's such great activities. We've had harvest festivals, we have stewardship days, we go out prune the trees and mulch the trees. So it has become a lively and wonderful place. So from here, I'd love to take you guys to the next stop in the park. Harley, what do you say we go to the harvest table next?
Let's go to the harvest table and take a look at that particular stop.
Here we are at the harvest table. Now, this is a beautiful big table that can seat up to 22 people. And when I first started working with Sherry on this community orchard project, we knew that we would need grants for events and also for a little bit of infrastructure in the park. So we needed a big table where we could have workshops, where people could have parties, like we have children's parties at this table. So with this table, once a year, the team, we scrub the table down and sometimes we oil it to protect it because it's made out of very special wood. So when we got this grant to build the harvest table, we wanted to not have anybody cut down any new trees. We wanted to use heirloom wood, wood that had been used for something else before. And so we heard about
Ah,
heirloom wood that came from Toronto's first docklands. These huge long planks of wood were parts of docks that were buried underground for 100 years, I think. Now, Harley, from your history perspective, can you tell me a little bit about where this wood might have come from?
certainly. First of all, that could be from the old Queen's Wharf. The Queen's Wharf existed about 100 years ago, 120 years ago, around Bathurst and Front streets, and has been excavated over the last couple of years to build condos. especially down at the foot of Bathurst Street. If anybody knows the Loblaws store at the corner of Queen's Quay and Bathurst, part of the Queen's Wharf is in their front entrance. If you look up, you will see the slatted woods remains of the old Queen's Wharf. So they use part of that wood to rebuild, reuse. So possibly your table came from the old Queen's Wharf, or one of
And why was it buried in the first place? Here they had perfectly good docks, which of course we have the wood from now. But why were these docks buried
well,
underground?
you're looking at landfill, right? So instead of taking out the docks, the landfill came in and buried the docks for how many hundreds of years, 100 years, and then when building, especially around Queens Quay, when people were building condos, they came to light again. So anywhere from the Don all the way to the Humber, you have a lot of landfill. So if you dig down, you're going to find some real treasures. And I think that your table is definitely a treasure of the old docklands.
These wood docks were buried underground. They were excavated and they used cranes to lift the wood and then sell it to people like us. So we used our grant money. We took some of this wood. We had somebody build us this big, beautiful table where we do workshops. So, for instance, we might be doing a tool sharpening workshop where we're sharpening the tools for the orchard and we invite the neighbors to come and bring their tools. We'll sharpen their tools for them. We do pruning workshops. There are children's parties at this table. And I love the fact that it's so historic. So that's our harvest table. The next stop I'd love to take you guys to is the cherry trees to learn a little bit more about the fruit we produce. Are you ready to move on, Harley?
We are ready. Let's go. I love cherries.
All right, so here we are in front of our cherry trees. We have two big, beautiful, mature, sweet cherry trees. But I wanted to tell you, we don't obviously just grow cherry trees in this park. We grow apple trees, we grow apricot trees, we have plum trees as well. We have also native trees like pawpaws and service berries. And so we've enjoyed the harvest for many of these types of fruits. In terms of the care, in order for a fruit tree to be healthy and produce fruit, there are a lot of responsibilities that the growers have to do. So fruit trees need pruning, which helps to keep them healthy and strong. It also helps them to support a sun-ripened harvest. So every branch needs to have access to the sun. They also need mulching, which is essentially how we feed our trees. Every year in the spring, we spread out compost around their roots to feed them because it's like any other being in this world. If you don't feed somebody, they're not going to be healthy and strong. And fruit trees can get nutrition from the soil, but once it has managed to take the nutrition out of the soil, it needs more nutrition, so more organic matter. And so we mulch the trees and we take care of them in various ways. And the fun part is we get to enjoy the harvests. Now, our cherry harvests are the most fun. They are the first harvest in the year, so the cherries grow very quickly. And what we do is we invite the community to come and join us. If you're on our mailing list, if you go to our website, communityorchard.ca, you can get on our mailing list. And last minute, we'll tell you, like, we'll give you a few days and say, okay, guys, we're going to do the cherry harvest in 3 days because we have to wait to see the cherries are ripe. The whole community comes in, people of all ages with their children. And we bring these big metal bowls, and everybody fills the metal bowls with cherries. After the end of an hour of harvesting, we measure the cherries so we know how many pounds of cherries we have that particular year. And then we divide them up into paper bags where every single participant gets to take home cherries. It's a really wonderful and fair way to distribute the harvest. So the reason we don't really have other big harvest days is our fruit trees are in a public park. We need to do a lot of education because people harvest the fruit off the trees before it's ripe. So our plum trees get harvested very quickly before it's ripe. I think people who harvest it are doing something with the unripe, plums. I don't know. Apples, should be ripening September, October. Usually they're gone by then. So the cherry harvest is our favorite because we can have so much fun in the community. And our hope is that as the other trees get bigger and bigger, even if people do harvest the fruit early on in the season, we hope there will be more fruit at the end of the season. So do you have any questions, Harley, about our fruit and our harvest and our trees?
I think that what you're doing is absolutely amazing. You're also teaching people how to uh, be resilient as well, about how to provide for themselves, which I think is an amazing lesson to all
How
of us.
to live sustainably. And in fact, as a result of all this work that I've done with the orchard, I've written 3 books on fruit tree care because I've learned so much about how can I take care of these trees without making it a full-time job? What is the easiest way to keep fruit trees healthy and productive? So that's what my books are about, and I do online courses and training. So yes, education is really a big part of what we do. So our next stop is going to be the Pollinator Garden. So shall we all move on to the next stop?
I'm definitely in for this adventure. I think it's fascinating. Let's go.
Okay, so here we are at the Pollinator Garden. And this is a beautiful garden now, but once it was pretty overgrown and filled with weeds. The worst weed is called thistle. It's very prickly. And so, me and the other volunteers, like Lynn was one of my friends and a fellow volunteer, we spent hours and hours digging out the weeds from the roots, digging out diseased shrubs that were in this bed, and planting something totally different. Now, for us, the important thing was to have a variety of flowering plants that would flower throughout the growing season so that we could attract pollinators who would pollinate our fruit trees for us. Because, of course, you can have a flowering fruit tree, but if it doesn't get pollinated, you will never have fruit as a result. So, this not only attracts pollinators, but it also attracts beneficial insects, and these beneficial insects eat the fruit tree pests that would be laying their eggs and making worms in the fruit. So there are so many good reasons why we spend so many hours caring for this beautiful pollinator garden and making it beautiful. And the reward is that if you come in July, you will see the garden is filled with insects buzzing away. There's native bees, bumblebees, butterflies, everything. And it's made me fall in love with insects and how wonderful they are. We couldn't live without them. We would have no food if there weren't insects and pollinators taking care of us. The program that we've been doing in the park is totally volunteer run. We have no staff. We just put it together. But I gotta say, we keep doing it because it's fun. It's about community building. It's about learning about nature, and it's about enjoying fruit and sustainability. We are always open to having new volunteers come to join us. They can learn about us at communityorchard.ca. And as I mentioned earlier, because of this project, I've been involved now for 15 years. I have learned so much about fruit trees that in the end, I've become a fruit tree care educator. I have online courses, I have books. So, what I realized in this adventure is that fruit trees aren't as easy as you'd think, but they are very rewarding. And if you know how to grow them properly, you can have a great time. Okay, so now let's go ahead to the intersection of Flanders and Eglinton, and I'll meet you guys there. Here we are at Flanders and Eglinton. Harley, tell me, why are we stopping here?
Flanders came from the World War One, and Menin came out of World War One. The area prior to that had pretty much English names, British names, but after World War One, Flanders Field and Menin came from battles, and in order to memorialize those two areas in Europe, the two names were changed. So we're looking at around 1924, when the two names were changed. But The names of streets in the area really actually have changed. All of them have actually changed. So if you look at Everton was actually called Luke Street, and Strathern was named Roach Street. And Roach Street was for the principal property owner, John Roach. And there's a whole story there. He owned the property from pretty much Bathurst over to Strathern, and property owners changed hands very quickly in this area. Remember, this area was predominantly farmland up until about 1913.
Wow. So what's interesting is it was farmland, and here our project is a community orchard. Were there orchards in this neighborhood as well?
There were several orchards. The last orchard that I kind of dug up in 1909, around 1900, was abandoned and just kind of forgotten about. So with your park, it's kind of your kind of continuing history, which is really, really interesting. This area was highly agricultural.
Okay, let's continue on to our next stop. We're going to stop at the next little parkette that we come to. So let's continue further east on Eglinton, and we'll see you there. Okay, so here we are in this little parkette. And if I look across the street, I can see that there's a big white building. It's the Village Shul. Can you tell me a little bit about that, Harley?
Certainly. This area developed more of an Orthodox Jewish presence in the 1950s, but the Jewish presence actually got started in Toronto in the Old Ward. So we're talking University, College, Queen, and Yonge. And after the Great Fire of 1904, a lot of the Jewish residents moved out of the ward to other parts of Toronto, especially Baldwin Village and Kensington, until the 1930s. And then there was a migration up to Eglinton in about 1955 or after the Second World War. So there's more of an Orthodox um, presence to this area than there was, let's say, in the old ward where it was mixed.
Earlier, I met one of the founders of the Village Shul, and she told me a little bit more about the history. Nancy, hi. So thanks for joining us for this little tour. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you are related to the Village Shul?
My name is Nancy Weisbrod, and I'm one of the founders of the Village Shul Aish Torah Synagogue. The shul is built on the site of a former gas station at the corner of Old Park and Eglinton. I lived my whole life in this neighborhood. Yet, when I got married and we hoped to start a family, I felt that my Jewish education wasn't really as fulfilling as it would like it to be. We were introduced to a young rabbi from Toronto, and that was really where the shul began, in our kitchen and home study groups. And then we rented space on Eglinton, just west of Bathurst, which was a former cheese shop. And from there, we moved to our new home where we are now in 1999, on Eglinton.
I understand that it includes stone that comes from Jerusalem. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Jerusalem stone was brought in to form the wall that houses our Aron Kodesh, where the Torahs are kept. And you walk into the main sanctuary, and the first thing that hits you is you feel like you're standing at the Western Wall in Jerusalem because the stone is from Jerusalem.
Fantastic. So let's continue up the road. We're still on the south side of Eglinton. And let's take a little hike to 967 Eglinton Avenue West. We're going to stop outside Bagel Brigade if you're feeling like a nibble, if you feel like a bagel. So let's go there. I'll meet you guys there. Okay, here we are in front of a store called Bagel Brigade. And this is one of, I think, three different bagel stores that we have on this strip. We also have kosher style food stores like Nortown. So Nortown isn't necessarily officially kosher. If you were Orthodox, you may not buy your meat there, but you can get all the treats that you love. Like, whether it's baked goods, they do sell them there too, or chopped liver, or all the famous kind of Jewish style yummy foods. You can still get those in this neighborhood, and there still is a Jewish presence, though it's not necessarily all Orthodox. It's more sort of people who are traditional. They keep some of the holidays, but they really love the food and the culture. So that's why I wanted to stop here at Bagel Brigade to show people that you can still enjoy so much of the old traditions here. Let's continue up a little bit further, and we are going to stop at the Jerusalem restaurant. So let's go further up. Okay, here we are outside Jerusalem's restaurant. And Harley, you'll notice that we just passed a whole bunch of different restaurants. There's like a sushi restaurant, there's an Indian restaurant, there's Chinese restaurant. Whatever you want, you can find in this neighborhood, which I find it really interesting that it's so multicultural. But the way you've been talking about things, it wouldn't have been this multicultural back, 60, 70 years ago. Am I right?
Certainly not. Certainly not. It was very much English. It was Anglican, like most of Toronto. This was not a multicultural city 70, 80 years ago. It was predominantly, you're looking about 80% English, Anglican. And the Second World War really was the page turner. It was really the one event. And then you had people coming in from all over the world. So if you look at the Jerusalem restaurant, for example, it opened in 1971 and was the first Middle Eastern restaurant in Toronto, which tells you a lot in 1971 that we were becoming multicultural. If you look at not just this particular neighborhood, but all of Toronto, in 1967, the first Caravana was held. So you're seeing how things are changing in Toronto. So in 1971, to have the first Middle Eastern restaurant in Toronto in this neighborhood was not surprising.
You know what's interesting is I remember as a child that there weren't as many restaurants in Toronto as there are today. And I remember only Chinese restaurants. That was a treat. We would go, and in fact, here on this strip in Eglinton, there used to be right near here a very old, like there was a Chinese restaurant, quite big. I remember as a little girl, you'd walk in and there was some sort of little, inside the door, they had a little penny pond. You'd throw a penny in, you'd walk over a little bridge. I loved that. And you'd eat Chinese food. But I don't remember any other kinds of foods. I do remember, however, going to the Jerusalem restaurant with my grandparents. So that would have been in the 70s. I guess it was relatively new then. So I was living history. What I find interesting is that you say it's after the Second World War, it became more multicultural. Is that because people were fleeing from Europe?
They were fleeing from Europe. They were fleeing from Europe. They really had no place to go. So they saw North America as sort of their savior. You look at the Italians. I mean, after World War II, you had 400,000 Italians coming in. So they were fleeing Europe. Most of Europe was in complete disarray, and Canada was the beacon. So from 1947 until 1970, you had millions of people coming to Canada and about 1 million people coming to Toronto. So between 1960 and 1970, this area developed really developed.
So let's move on now to our next stop, which is an interesting one. We're going to walk up to almost at Bathurst, to where the Nortown Theater once was. Let's go now. This site was where there was once the Nortown Theater, a movie theater. Now, I don't remember it, but Harley, can you tell me a little bit about this theater?
I certainly can. The Nortown Theater opened on March 17th, 1948, and it wasn't extremely elegant from the outside, but inside it was very large for this neighborhood. This neighborhood was developing between 1935 and 1950. So this particular theater lasted for about 30 years. In the 1970s, it was demolished to make way for a bit of a mall in about 1972, 1973, and now today there's another building there. So that theater is gone completely. I just hope the memories are not gone.
Well, what I find interesting is when we started this tour, we were learning about this as an agricultural area, farmland, orchards, and then you've got 1948, you got your first theater. They had made it. There was obviously enough homes and enough buildings to accommodate somewhere fun where you could go and hang out and watch movies. And I think it's sad that it didn't last. I do remember the mall that was here after that was demolished not too long ago. But it's exciting to know that we had that history. From here, we're going to go and cross over to the other side of Eglinton. And we've got a treat for the end of the tour for you guys. But let's cross over the road and I'll meet you guys at the other side. Our next stop is here outside Nortown Foods. So we just saw the Nortown Theater. And I'm not sure where the name Nortown comes from, but Nortown Foods has the same name. And this is one of the places that sells kosher style food. So if you hop in here, you're going to find some really delicious schnitzels or chopped liver, really lovely, yummy food to make, whether it's a bar mitzvah party or, a Jewish New Year party, you can find your food here. But before we go in, Harley, tell me, I was just wondering, Eglinton itself, where did this busy street get its name from?
Oh, yes, we don't want to forget about that. Eglinton was actually not called Eglinton, it was called the Fourth Concession. So the concession road started at Queen Street, first concession, Bloor, second concession, St. Clair, third concession, Eglinton, fourth concession. And it was known as Fourth Concession for most of its history. John Montgomery, if people are familiar with history, they might remember the rebellion of 1837. He owned a tavern, Eglinton and Young, and he also settled in the area, and he named the street after the Earl of Eglinton. Now that is a theory. That's not completely fact. We don't know exactly where Eglinton came from, but we're pretty sure, historians are pretty sure, that John Montgomery named it for an Earl of Eglinton. That's where Eglinton comes from.
And
So
I'm
it was
assuming the Earl of Eglinton is from Britain
from
somewhere.
England. From England.
Okay, so now let's continue down to our last stop, and that's where there's a treat waiting for you guys. So, shall we go to Baskin Robbins and end our tour there? So, here we are at Baskin Robbins, and I do remember as a child coming to Eglinton for ice cream. So, to me, Eglinton also represents ice cream and treats. In fact, growing up, I do remember a candy store. There was also a candy store here. I don't know what happened with that. So, Harley, we've done a full circle. You do tours all over the city of Toronto. You've got how many tours?
Um, I have a catalog of 500 tours.
500 history tours in the city of Toronto.
Yes, yes.
So that's a lot of tours. So you're a guy who likes history. So when you think about this neighborhood and the Upper Village BIA, what place does it play in terms of the history of our beautiful city?
I think that it's been overlooked. I think the history of the Upper Village has been overlooked. I don't think there's a lot of history about it. I think there's so much history that has not been uncovered yet. I think that the Spadina Expressway really defined the neighborhood, but I think the neighborhood is just a jewel. It's a real jewel that people should be exploring. I think all the neighborhoods of Toronto, there's something good there in each neighborhood. And there are gems here. But you didn't ask me what my favorite Baskin Robbins flavor was.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What is your favorite Baskin Robbins flavor?
Rocky Road.
Oh, goodness, of course it is.
Rocky Road.
Of
That-
course it is. And for me as a child, it was rainbow sorbet
okay. Okay.
because you didn't ask me either.
Okay, I didn't ask. Okay, what's your favorite ice cream?
Okay, now we know the answer.
There we go.
So what a beautiful way to end the tour. If you guys will continue walking west, you'll come back to where you started, the Eglinton West subway station. And I want to thank you for taking this virtual tour with us. Harley, I really enjoyed chatting with Harley about the history. Thank you, Harley.
And thank you, Susan. I enjoyed working with you. I think it was just a fabulous experience.
So anybody who's listening to this virtual tour, learn more about us. You can learn about the community orchard, go to communityorchard.ca, or learn about our beautiful Upper Village BIA and all the fantastic businesses. And I love supporting my local businesses. I got to tell you, because I don't have a car, this is where I do my shopping. I buy my fruit and vegetables here. We have a fantastic health food shop. We've got with really good prices. We've got great restaurants. And so I feel very grateful that I live in a part of Toronto where I don't have to go anywhere if I don't want. I don't have to take the car. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for this tour. And I hope I'm going to see you around the neighborhood. Take care and bye for now.
Take care, everybody.